Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahajalita Shri Vishakhanitamasya Hare Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Namaste Sakta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwamurte Pranamami Hayuke Vanchakalpatarubhesha Kripa Sindhubhesha Patihanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukham karoti vasanam sagamaya prishim yatkapatanam vande Shri Guru Dina Karanam Parmanandam Madhavam Namo Shivaya Krishna Krishna Bhutana Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharani Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Prasachari Sikarani. So we had discussed the pastime in the last two sittings. So just to do a quick recap. So who remembers who was Gajendra in his previous life? Who was the crocodile in the previous life? What was his brother's name? What was the general area where this pastime took place? And we said that it's probably either in Jambudvi or in Crouchby, because it says it's on the shores of the ocean of milk, and Crouchby is on the shores of the ocean of milk. But there is a Triputa mountain in Keshuchal in Jambudvi, so these are two places. So we'll start discussing the Gajendra Stotra. These are beautiful prayers by Gajendra. And as I mentioned, that Acharyas say that there are only two prayers that one has to recite from the Bhagavatam. Then the first is Gajendra, one should recite the Gajendra, and the second is the Gopi. And more emphasis is given on Gajendra. And as we see in the prayers, we will be able to. Gajendra is speaking for all of us. Like we are all with our foot caught in greedy. Greedy also caught in this material world. Right? So we are not. So we are not much different from, our situation is not much different from Gajendra. We can empathize a lot with them. Okay, so the prayers are in the 8th canto, 3rd chapter, beginning from verse 2. I'll start with verse 1, which is kind of the segue into the prayer. So if you can repeat after me. Shivagraya Niruvacha Evam Vivasito Buddhya Samadaya Manohini Jajapa Paramam Chapyam Rajanmane Anushikshakam Sri Sukadeva Goswami continued. Thereafter, the king of the elephants, Gajendra, fixed his mind in his heart with perfect intelligence and chanted a mantra which he had learned in his previous birth as Indradyumna and which he remembered by the grace of Krishna. So, when Indradyumna became an elephant, then he was a full-on elephant. He considered himself to be an elephant. He had she-elephants as his wives, so he was just living that life. But now, after spending 1,000 years in that Sarovar, in excruciating pain, he, by the grace of Krishna, he remembers this phrase. Now, it's not clear whether it was this particular phrase that he would recite, or he was awarded the realizations. Because we'll see that in the prayers, there's no mention of God. There's no mention of Krishna per se. There's mention of God. There's no mention of Krishna. Right? So, Indradyumna was a devotee. Right? So he was obviously worshipping Lord Krishna. So it's possible that he remembered this particular stotra, which doesn't have the name of Krishna or Narayan in it. Or more likely, he was awarded the realizations, because what he speaks is very specific to his situation, his circumstances. And he has this particular situation that he has a crocodile holding on to his foot and he is about to die. So the prayers are very, very specific to that situation. So Sukdev Goswami Bhargana is another name for Sukdev Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva. So he starts with Evam Vivasito Buddhaya. So Evam means therefore. So the therefore comes in conjunction with at the end of the previous chapter. Gajendra, he has this realization that for such a long time, I have been relying on so many things for possible rescue. So what was he relying on? First and foremost, he was relying on his own strength. He was enormously powerful. And really speaking, if he wanted, he could have crushed the crocodile if the crocodile was on land anytime. But he was in water. He was not in his element. But if he was relying a lot on his own strength. When that did not work, then he was relying on his friends and brothers, etc., trying to rescue him. And they did try. Right? Then his wives, they could not do much, but at least they were standing back giving a moral support. But one by one, they all left. So now he is all alone. Right? So he says, therefore, he said, I have seen all these ways by which I was possibly looking for shelter, nothing works. So he says, Eva Vivasato. So Vivasito, does anybody know where does Vivasito come in Bhagavad Gita?
Where does Vivasito come in? You know, that word comes in Bhagavad Gita. Vyavasayatmika buddhi, is that?
Yes, so this is second chapter, verse 41. Right. Vyavasatmika buddhi, ekaya kurunandana, bahushaka, yastasa, buddhiya, avyasasena. Right. So Krishna speaks about, so when he's introducing bhakti, right, first condition he says is Vivasatmika Buddhi, Ekaya Guru, a mind that is geared towards devotion is single-minded. So actually that is a very important prerequisite to devotional service. So we see that the first thing that Gajendra does from this verse, really speaking, his bhakti is, his path to bhakti is starting. And it starts with Evam Vivasato Buddha. Same thing Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Vivasatmika Buddhi Ekaya Kuru Nandana. Now, why is Ekaya Kuru Nandana, why is Vivasatmika Buddhi important in the pursuit of bhakti? Right? There are people who might debate that through variety one gets a more holistic perspective, and the more YouTube videos I look at, the more information I get. What is the harm in getting more? Why is Vivasatmika important?
Can create a lot of confusion in the mind.
Because
create confusion.
Because Vivasatmika creates confusion. What else?
It can also hamper your faith, I guess. And
Can hamper your faith. What else?
Gives you a sense of purpose, focus, direction. Like if you have one pointed intelligence, you know what you're going for, and then the other things can all serve that one purpose.
Yes, that's very good. Also, when you're starting out, so you look at it that this is the first point of entry into bhakti, right? And Krishna is saying, you're Satmika Buddhi, right? So he's saying that focus on one thing only. Once when Srila Prabhupada, one of his disciples came and told Prabhupada that Prabhupada, when I look at the picture of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, tears come to my eyes. And Prabhupada said, oh, what about when you look at my picture? Now, it's not that Prabhupada was competing with the Guru Maharaj. Right? Prabhupada, he gave his life to his Guru Maharaj. You know, in the purport for 241, Prabhupada writes this point that when Krishna says Vivasatmika Buddhi, it means faith in your Guru. Right? And empirically also, this is my personal observation, that people when they take to Krishna consciousness, if they're all over, right, they're getting something from here, something from YouTube, something from the neighbor, something from XYZ, it does not mean that there is a lack of bona fide sources of instructions. Right? That's definitely not what the premise is. But faith has to be anchored to grow. Prabhupada would give this example, I think I've given this in the past, that when a man and woman marry, then for that man, the woman is the only woman in the world. There will be other women who are prettier or can sing better or whatever, or there may be other men who are stronger or richer, but for that woman, that man is the only man. That's the basis of success for marriage. Because if you look at from the other side, if the wife keeps saying that, oh, you know, this person is better than you in terms of this, and that person makes more money, and this person is stronger, or the husband keeps comparing the wife, even as, without being like trained psychiatrists, we can understand that marriage is not going to be a happy marriage. So that ek hai, that one, and especially with Krishna, that theme of ek hai is very, very central to his instructions. He ends the Bhagavad Gita saying, what does he say? Mam ekam shartam. Right? Only take shelter of me. Right? So we see this can sit over there. Be more comfortable with this. So you can see that you can see that foundation taking place in the mind of Gajendra, right? So he is now, he does not even, if you look at his prayers, does not even give one iota of thought to anything else, right? So the only thing that he is saying that is, let me now, evam vivasato buddhya samadaya mano hridi. So he says mind, intelligence and heart. Let me connect the three of them. Right? So the mind is where the senses sit. Intelligence is where the discrimination happens, and heart is where bhakti comes, the emotions, the center of emotions. Right? So he is in intense amount of pain. Let me not worry about that pain. His intelligence was Moksha. So let me not travel along the different lines. And he said, let me align all these three into one only, which is the lotus feet of the Lord. So Gajendra, Sukdev Goswami says, Prag Janmani Anushikshitam, that he begins to chant based on Anushikshitam. So Shikshitam means what he learned. Anu means following what he learned. Which is why according to some, Anushikshitam means that. So what follows after you learn is realizations. Right? So you learn something, you digest it, and you say, oh, okay, this makes sense, right? So following what he had realized, he begins to speak. So abhyas is very, very important. The reason this came to him in this life is because he practiced over and over again. Because of the practice, it remained in him somewhere. Even in such a degraded birth as an elephant, it still remained. So I remember that the very first time when we went to Gita Nagari, we were just, I think more from a tourist perspective we had gone. And at that time, it was very, very small. So we were talking to, somebody asked us to go to a room of Mataji, so we knocked at the room, and she was inside and she said, Hari Bol. And then we didn't know what it meant. So we knocked again and she said, Hari Bol. So, actually, now Hari Bol is just, it's just saying Hari Bol, right? We thought that she was just sitting and saying Hari Bol, Hari Bol. So we kept knocking and it said Hari Bol. Then, we opened the door. But, the reality is that after some time for devotees, this abhyas, it becomes second nature. That in times of anxiety, in times of happiness, Hare Krishna, Hari Bol, that comes to you. It becomes like athletes, they have muscle memory, right? They play without even, they react without even thinking about it. So for devotees, it becomes muscle memory. Like for you stub your toe, somebody else might cuss and say, whatever it is. What will devotees say? Krishna, Hari Bol. Right? So when you really stub your toe, when it's the time for death, what comes out of your mouth? Krishna, Hari Bol. Right? And when you say, at that time when you say Hari Bol, if the young putas come, they'll say Hari Bol and go away. Right? They're also devotees. They all say Hari Bol, Vishnu putas are coming. We're on a, we just came to say Hari Bol. So, one of the questions over here, and let's see what you think about it. In the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, verse 40, one of the The whole of Bhagavad Gita is full of assurances of Krishna. There's so many assurances overall. So the first assurance that he gives in verse 40. Right? 41 then he gives why, what can you do to get that assurance? 48 gives the assurance, Nevikumanashasti pratvaya vidyate swalpam apiyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayate. So he says swalpasya, that little bit of devotional service, swalpasya, will protect you from the greatest of dangers. Srila Prabhupada in the purport writes that one of the greatest dangers for the jiva is to lose this human form. Because in this human form you can do bhakti. Now there are exceptions. There is Gajendra doing bhakti in different form, but he's an exception. That's why he's there in Bhagavatam. But otherwise, you need the human form to do devotional service. So the question is, if King Indradumna had done bhakti, how did he become an elephant? How did he lose his human form despite the assurances given by Krishna in Gita?
Vaishnava Prahad.
Very good. Because of Vaishnava Prahad, right? So we see that there are some situations in which these things are contravened. There is another example in Bhagavatam where a devotee loses his human form despite executing bhakti. Bharat Maharaj, right? Chitraketu also, he gets a human form, but Asura form, but that's a different example. But Bharat Maharaj, he was not even cursed. So Chitraketu was cursed. Other examples are Jay Vijay, they were cursed, so they got Asuric form. Gajendra was cursed by Rastarishi, he became an elephant. Vishwanath Chakravarti, when he comments on this, he says that when you see this gross violation for statements made by Krishna, there is only one person who can violate statements made by Krishna, and that is Krishna. That is Krishna himself, right? So it means that he is doing it for a purpose, and the purpose, of course, is twofold: for the benefit of the person. So we'll see that in this case Gajendra benefited. In case of Bharat Maharaj, he benefited. They went back to Godhead. And for the benefit of us, for devotees. When we look at the past time, we get so many lessons out of it. We get such an understanding of the fathomless compassion of Krishna. So three reasons are given. One is the intervention of Krishna. The second is that this is from Chakravarti's commentary, that the king's absorption was incomplete. Though Indradumna was performing bhakti, he had traces of royal pride and inattentiveness. I think he makes that point based on the fact that he neglected to offer respect to Agastya Muni. Right? So he had traces of royal pride. So the curse purified him and placed him in a situation where he could call upon the Lord with utter helplessness. This is the essence of Sharanagati. Right? And the third point is that bhakti is imperishable. So even though he had the body of an elephant, nothing changed. Right? So it was incidental. Bhakti was still flourishing within him. So now, from the next verse, we will start with the discussion of the stotra. Just to give you a little bit of an overview of the stotra, we'll see that even though Gajendra, he never takes the name of the Lord, but he describes in great details the qualities of the Lord. So one may ask, how is that possible? That if he is indeed continuing the mercy that he received in his previous life, how is it that he retains the name, did not retain the name, but retained the remembrance of the quality? So to understand this, let's look at a pastime that is similar to Gajendra but opposite. Right? So is there somebody in the Bhagavatam who actually just remembered the name but not the qualities? Ajamil. Right? So Ajamil, even the name was accidental. Right? He just remembered the name but not the qualities. Gajendra, he remembers the quality but not the name. Both of them were liberated. Right? Now, it is said that through Naam, one has access to Guna, qualities. And from that, Rupa, form, and then Leela, pastimes. Yes. So, the name gives access to this. But from this word we understand, it's not that it is an ascending access. What it means is that the name contains within it all this. When you have the name, you have the Gun, Roop and Leela at the time. Ajamil had the name, he had everything at that time. And that's why, even though he just said Narayana, sufficient for him to go back to Godhead. Ajamil, Gajendra, he had the guna, he had the qualities of the Lord. Those qualities, after 1,000 years of suffering, at the time of imminent death, comes Lord Hari. Ajamil, one moment of saying the name, the Vishnu Dutas are there. So one can understand the potency of the Holy. How much more potent it is. Now it also points to the realization that devotees and non-devotees get. That when devotees chant the holy name, then within the holy name they get access to all this. The same name may be available everywhere else, but without Premanjana Charuti, without the eyes being smeared with the ointment of bhakti, it is simply a sound vibration for them. Another thing that happens is that when Gajendra is praying, then all the demigods, they are assembled and they are watching him. And none of them come to help him. So they are listening to his prayers, and when he is enunciating the qualities, then Indra says, that's not me. And Brahma says, that's not me. Lord Shiva says, that's not me. Right? So they're all kind of, they have a balcony seat, they're watching Gajendra. with this and this. When Lord Hari comes, then Chakravarti Pad says that the Devtas they have two, or let's see if you can figure out. They experience two emotions. What would be the two emotions you think they might experience?
Joy.
Hmm?
Joy.
Okay.
Surprise. Surprise. Yeah.
Okay.
Some kind of latent envy that who is this person who is greater than
Envy.
me, maybe.
Possible.
Okay.
Bewilderment. Maybe they're bewildered.
Bewilderment. So, cool. So they experience fear and embarrassment. So when Lord Hari comes, then that elephant is from that point they understand this is a devotee. So then they're turning to each other and saying, what are you doing? There was a devotee in problem. You were just sitting around watching, like this is a show that's going on. Right, so you should have done something, Brahma. Brahma is saying, how could I have known? Right, so the moment Lord Hari comes sitting on Garuda, then Gajendra is not an elephant anymore. He is a devotee. And the Devas are very aware of the fact that Krishna is a very, very soft corner for his devotees. So they are scared. That Krishna looks at them and says, "Did you rascals? My devotee was stuck over here and you were just sitting there idly watching. Should have done something." So what do the Devas do? Right? So they take flowers and they start putting it on the Gajendra. I said, of course it goes on Lord Vishnu also, right? And they all stand behind Lord Vishnu and they start glorifying him. Now they are devotees also, they are obviously glorifying out of natural appreciation of the Lord personally coming. But also that how could you have let a devotee suffer? So sometimes when people take to bhakti, they think that if I don't worship Lord Shiva, then this will happen. Or if I don't worship Lord Ganesh, who is my what is it called? Ishtadev, being worshipped for generations in my family, what will happen? Or Durga Devi will get upset. Right? But the reality is, and this is explained in Bhagavad Gita, that when the jiva is liberated and the jiva is going back to the spiritual world, so the soul doesn't just go back. Actually, the soul goes through all the layers of the universe. From here, they go to the Bhuva, then the Svartlok, then Mahar, then all the way to Brahmalok, then the seven coverings of the universe, Kaushal Ocean, then Brahmajyoti, Vaikuntha, all the way they will go. And everywhere that they are going, people are saying Jai, Jai, Jai. When they go to the Svartlok, the demigods, they are throwing flowers at this jiva. And Radha Govind Maharaj in one of his lectures says that when the devas they see a jiva doing karma, performing this demigod worship, they Maharaj has a very unique style of saying. He's saying the devas will say, "Dhat tere ki, ek aur aa gaya." So he said, now we have to go give him some benediction, and if somehow he does well, he will come and compete over here with me. So ek aur aa gaya. So they are not very happy. They do it out of a sense of that they're supposed to do it. It's the law of karma, right? If you do pious things, they have to give you benedictions, right? They don't give it happily. But when the devotee is there, then from the heart they are happy. Then they get the real benedictions, right? And not just at the time of perfection. Right? Even when a person is aspiring to become a devotee, even then the hearts of the demigods, it becomes very, very soft towards them. Becomes very, very compassionate to them. Right? Because they themselves are wanting to go down that path, right? So, I forget which book, but of the 330 million demigods, 33 million demigods go back to Godhead. Right? So they are pure devotees, or will become pure devotees. So they themselves are getting up in the morning and chanting Hare Krishna during Mangalarti. Right? So when they see you chanting Hare Krishna, they're like, okay, God rules. So they have this sense of empathy. Right? So now law of karma is there, whatever it is, Krishna is taking care of them. Doesn't mean that for devotees, it's always spring and always everything nice. There are hardships also there, but the difference is not what the hardships come, but how they are experienced. Like Prabhupada would give this example of being out in the sun with an umbrella. Right? Doesn't mean that the sun stops, but the umbrella is there. So it doesn't mean that the hardships for the devotees stop, but does not affect the devotees, does not bewilder them. When Abhimanyu died, Arjuna was angry, he was sad, but he was not bewildered. Right? That was the difference. When Draupadi lost her 5 children, her heart just became more compassionate. Right? When Ashwatthama came, initially Draupadi was going to kill him, but when he actually saw Ashwatthama, he said, Guru Putra, Brahman, let him go. Right? But look at Gandhari. When Gandhari's 100 children were killed, she cursed Krishna. Okay, that's the difference there. Okay, so we now, how are we doing the time?
18. So you have another 20 minutes.
Okay, so hopefully we'll be able to at least do one verse, if not 2. So this is the first verse of the sloka. If you can repeat after me. Shri Gajendra Vacha Om Namo Bhagavate Tasmai Om Namo Bhagavate Tasmai Yatayeta Chidatmakam Yatayeta Chidatmakam Purushadi Bijaya Pareshyabi Pareshyabi Dhimahi I just repeat the verse. Shri Gajendra Vacha Om Namo Bhagavate Tasmai Om Namo Bhagavate Tasmai Yatayeta Chiratmakam Purushadi Bijaya Pareshyabi Dhimahi Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The king of the elephants, Gajendra, said, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Person, Vasudeva. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Because of him, this material body acts due to the presence of spirit. And he is therefore the root cause of everyone. He is worshipable for such exalted persons as Brahma and Shiva, and has entered the heart of every living being. Let me meditate upon him. Now, one thing is that in the translation, Srila Prabhupada, so like he says that I offer my respectful obeisances to Supreme Person Vasudeva. So Vasudeva is not there in the verse, and Srila Prabhupada does that. What he does that is he takes the conclusion and then puts it ahead for our benefit. Right. So one reason he does it, Prabhupada once made this point that even if somebody reads one page of my book, he should have complete realization. Right. Now, we of course have read many pages, we still are working on it. But that was Prabhupada's vision, right? He said even if somebody reads one page of my book, he should have complete realization. So that's why Bhagavad Gita, right from the second chapter, Srila Prabhupada starts talking about bhakti. And even though Krishna is talking about, at that point, he's talking about mostly jnana, but Prabhupada starts talking about bhakti because ultimately Krishna talks about bhakti. There was a commentator who was criticizing Prabhupada, and he said that Swamiji says that it is Bhagavad Gita as it is, but so many of his translations he has translated at points karma to bhakti, jnana to bhakti, which Prabhupada has done. And then he says in the 6th chapter, when Krishna talks about Astanga Yoga, Prabhupada in the commentary, he condemns Astanga Yoga. And he says, how can you say Bhagavad Gita as it is? When Krishna is saying Astanga Yoga and Prabhupada is saying don't do Astanga Yoga. So how can you say it is, this is as it is? But the reason that it is as it is because it is as Krishna wanted it to be. Right? Krishna speaks Astanga Yoga over there specifically for the reason that Prabhupada puts in the purport. You can't do it. Later on Arjuna himself says, cannot do it. So Prabhupada is simply following the desires of Krishna. That is actually as it is. Once when he was in Chennai, then a Sanskrit scholar came, and he had read the Bhagavad Gita, prepared lots of notes, and he sat in front of Prabhupada and he said, this particular word translates like this word translates like this, you have translated it like this, very respectfully, but he was pointing out. Prabhupada kept saying this thing, and then I think it's in my jacket.
Mission jacket?
So Prabhupada was listening, and after that he turns to a disciple and he says that make sure he gets some prasada. So one of the other disciples said, Prabhupada, they were criticizing so much, you didn't say anything. And Prabhupada said, but did you hear how many times he said Krishna? So Prabhupada never meant it to be a scholarly, authentic, and abiding by all the rules of Vyakran, etc. Prabhupada meant it to touch our hearts. And that's why Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, after the Bible, is the single most piece of printed and sold religious literature in the entire world. It's been translated into most number of languages. Amongst the BBT publications, it is actually translated into the most number of languages. Does anybody know which is the second book that is translated into most amongst the BBT Prabhupada's books? Translated in
Krishna book, Krishna.
No.
Science of Self-Realization?
No. It's a small book by the name of Perfect Questions Prabhupada. That's translated. If you read it, it's very, 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 very interesting. Actually, Bhakti Tirth Prabhu, he came here to give a seminar. At the time he speaks about how that book came out to be there. So first verse, right? Om Namo Bhagavate Tasmai, right? So Tasmai means it's kind of to whomever it may concern. Okay? So whoever is God. Om Namo Bhagavate. So Gajendra is realized enough to understand Bhagavati. So he says Om Namo, offering obeisances, Tasmai. To whoever it may concern. Now he will successively elaborate on various qualities of that Bhagavati. Right? So he starts the prayers with the pranam Om. And Srila Prabhupada writes that Om means that now you are invoking the presence of Krishna. Om does not mean the impersonal Brahman. So many people, before I came to ISKCON in Delhi, I used to go to this place where they would make you sit and chant Om for like hours and hours together. So they would make you sit in a dark room, and you would chant like. So everybody would be like chanting Om. It was kind of hypnotic also. Everybody would be chanting Om, and the idea was that you would have to carry your breath for as long as possible. Right? There was no philosophy. They didn't tell much about it. They just said, this is the sound of the universe. It's just a personal form. That's the going understanding that Om is the impersonal Brahman. So Srila Prabhupada right up front in the purport, he says, no, Om is the sound incarnation of Krishna. That is why the Vedic mantras start with Om, because they are all dedicated to the Supreme Lord. Right? So when you say Om Guru Bhava Swaha, right? So when you chant the Gayatri mantra, it is directly invoking the presence of the Lord. Even when you are doing Brahma Gayatri, right? You are directly invoking the presence of the Lord at the time. So Gajendra says that Purushadi Bijaya, right? So he is again emphasizing on the personal form of the Lord. So what does Purush mean? So one meaning of the Purush is enjoyer. Purush and Prakriti. Prakriti is enjoy, Purush enjoyer. Other meaning of Purush is so Puri is where one lives. It's like city. Like Jagannath Puri. It's the city where Lord Jagannath lives. Kanpur. I don't know who lives there, but it's like Kanpur. It's a city where somebody lives over there. So Puri is the city. And
Janakpuri. Janakpuri.
Janakpuri, right? Janakpuri.
Gorakhpur,
As opposed to, I think most of the time when the Mughals gave the name, it was Abad.
Yeah.
So Abad was like flourishing, established. Ghaziabad, Meerabad, established because of this person, that person, established in honor of that person. So Purusha means one who lives. Okay. And essentially it points to the Lord who is living in the body. So when Gajendra says Purushaya, then he thinks that but there is another person that is also living in the body. Who is that?
Self.
That's the Jiva. Right? So he said, I should not confuse my prayers. That I should make sure that they are only there for the Lord. Right? So bells and suspenders. He's saying Om, only for the Lord. Right? So when he says Purusha, he immediately follows with Para Ishaya. So Isha is are the controllers. So Isha is Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Indra. So these are the universal controllers. So Para Ishaya, one who controls this controllers, one who is beyond this controllers, one who controls everyone. that is the person that I am giving my obeisances. Right? Then he says, Eta Chidatmakam. So Chidatmakam is that the person that I am praying to, Chit is consciousness. The person that I am praying to is the one that creates consciousness within the body. The soul on itself can never create consciousness. Why? Because the soul has no understanding of how to operate the material world. You look at it, the soul is completely spiritual. Right? It's in a completely alien environment. Does not understand the Panchtattvas, does not understand the subtle body. Right? It's surrounded by all of them, but it has no understanding of what to do with it. All that the soul can do is, what is the one thing that soul can do? Huh? Desire. All that the soul can do is desire. So Prabhupada gives the example of, like, even when you move your hand, it is only because the Paramatma is permitting it. The soul desires to move the hand, but the Paramatma permits it. And then he gives a very good point. He said, if it was completely based on the desire of the soul, then everybody would fly. And the soul desires, I want to fly, you should be able to fly. If things are happening based on the desire of the soul. But the Paramatma, it gives you based on what you desire and what you deserve. And based on that, it will, then it's the Paramatma that manipulates the material world, the machinery of this body based on the desires of the soul. So, Srila Prabhupada, commenting on this verse, says that when one understands that it is the Lord that is manipulating these material elements, this material world, then one can begin to understand that there is really nothing material. So what is the only one thing material in this creation? There is only one thing that is material in this creation. That is the consciousness. And that's the only thing that is material. That's why Prabhupada introduced this word, term Krishna consciousness. Because that's the only thing that changes. That when you look at something as an object of your personal enjoyment, then it becomes material. Regardless of what the antecedent is. And you may have a very beautiful, deity of Krishna, nicely decorated, etc. But if you say, this belongs to me, this is for my enjoyment, or this is for my livelihood, it becomes material like that. It just becomes an idol. Okay. Or you may have just something that you're completely saying that like Prabhupada said that my dictaphone, it is completely spiritual because the only thing I use it to do is to to dictate my books. So it's made of machinery and electronics and etc. So the only thing that is material is a consciousness over here. So then Prabhupada makes a very interesting point. He says, therefore a devotee who engages in the service of the Supreme Lord and who constantly thinks of Him should never be considered to be having a material body. If it extends to material objects that you are using, it actually then extends to your material body. And Prabhupada gives two examples to illustrate that. The first example is deities. The deities, you can think they're made of stone or wood or paint, but when you worship them, the Lord kindly occupies it and it is spiritualized. There is nothing material about it. The second example he gives is Guru. He says that Gurushanara Mati, Gurushanar Mati, that one who thinks of his spiritual master as having a material body is an offender. Because what is the spiritual master or what is an advanced devotee using his body for? Using it to serve Krishna. So the consciousness is aligned to the original purpose and everything gets spiritualized. That's why when advanced devotees leave the bodies are not cremated. Right? Because they are actually spiritual. So they are considered to be as places of pilgrimage. So that's why they're put in samadhi. Okay, let's go to the next verse, verse 3.
We only have 5 minutes.
Okay. So then I can pause here and see if there's any discussions, any questions, comments.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for the beautiful class, Prabhuji. Two questions, Prabhuji. One is when Gajendra was crying in pain and he's praying to the Lord actually. The demigods are seeing. It is not that they are busy with something else, occupied with something else. They are seeing what he is praying and they are feeling, okay, he is not calling me. But it is not that until the prayers are completed, Lord not appeared before the Gajendra. So why they choose not to help just because somebody is in pain before their eyes? And that was my first question.
I think it's more because this actually Radhabai Maharaj speaks about it. He's saying they were waiting to hear their names. So they were ready to help, but they were waiting to hear their names. So they were actually hearing attentively.
Sure.
That is he saying Shivaya Namaha? Lord Shiva would have taken his stride and killed because any one of them could have killed the greedy, right? But they did not. And that also speaks about the nature of worship, that this notion of worshipping vaguely, जो भी भगवान है सुन ले मेरी बात, right? Nobody is going to hear. Everybody would be like they were saying, right? It's more in corporate way that there were 4 people: somebody, anybody, everybody, and nobody. Right? And there was some work to be done, and anybody could have done it, but everybody thought that somebody could do it, and then nobody did it. Right? So it's the idea of ownership when there is perceived lack of collective responsibility. Here there is not just that, there is also this question of faith. Right? Like even if you look at it from a more contemporary perspective, right? If there are 2 or 3 people and somebody comes and says, "Can one of you help me?" Most probably nobody will help. Right? But if you go to a person and say, "Could you help me, please?" There's a greater chance that the person will say, "What can I do for you?" Right? So the nature of faith is that it grows when it is personal, as opposed to when it is general. Right? We have the anyway. So there are other examples, but yeah, that's what.
And a follow-up question on the same thing.
Okay.
They're waiting. I understand that, because sometimes worships are like more formal, but in this scenario he was in dire need of someone like coming help. So, normally we see that some even human beings also, when they are compassionate, they come forward to help, and the demigods are even greater souls. So, uh, only if they worship me, then only I will help, otherwise I don't help. Is that the attitude they carry, or?
Yes, because Gajendra is not the only one who is suffering with the crocodile, right? Ultimately, why was Gajendra suffering? Because of his karma. Right. And there are cases where people suffer a lot more than Gajendra does, right? So, you can't fault the devas that you see this person suffering, fix this. Gajendra is responsible for his suffering. Just as each one of us is responsible for our own sufferings. We can't fault the devas that I will get and down, didn't you see me do this, right? And where's the law of karma? Right?
Everybody will be praying some or other way that somebody come and help.
Somebody come and help, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the wonderful class. When you were talking about Naam and Gunu, how the Gunu is within the Naam, I was thinking about what makes Hare Krishna chanting special, because with that logic, someone would come to me and like, तुम ये क्यों chant कर रहे हो? तुम Om Namah Shivaya भी कुछ कर सकते हो. That will give you equal potency. So how do you, when you meet people who challenge you, how do you navigate that conversation?
So the question is,
because I think my question is, Prabhu, in any kind of chanting, it is going to have potency, right? Because the name would have the quality. So then, if we are chanting Hare Krishna as opposed to Om Namah Shivaya, what is the difference between the two, and why are we choosing to chant Hare Krishna mantra versus Om Namah Shivaya?
It's a good question and it's a valid question also. So one way to look at it is that.
Can you repeat the question for the audience?
So the question is that what makes the chanting of Hare Krishna special as opposed to Om Namah Shivaya or some other mantras? So one question would be that what makes Om Namah Shivaya special? So the potency of Om Namah Shivaya is derived from the scriptures. It's in the scripture that says that Om Namah Shivaya, it invokes the mercy of Lord Shiva. The same scripture talks about the potency of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. You cannot do Ardhamurk Nyaya. Ardhamurk Nyaya is that you say that I only accept the head of the and not the tail. So you cannot say that I only accept the part of the scripture that says Om Namah Shivaya, but I reject the part of the scripture that says that chanting Hare Krishna is the highest. And the scriptures say that in the Kali Sanatana Upanishad, it says Iti Shodashkam Nam Nam Kali Karantam Nashna Nath Parat Rupaya Sabridesha. That this 16-word mantra, this is Lord Brahma telling Narad Muni. And there are so many scriptural references, not to speak the fact that Krishna came as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to establish it. Right? So the same scriptures that are talking about the potency of chanting the different mantras also talks about the exclusive potency of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. That's why we chant Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for this wonderful class, and this special Kartik month, this particular prayer is so precious and to understand. I just have a kind of complimentary comment to it, that when you mentioned someone is glorifying the Supreme Lord or desiring to get connected are being supported by all the demigods, versus someone as per their desire want to achieve something material. The demigods, how they feel. And if we look at all the pastimes in Shastras, it always says that somebody is praying to get something material, Indra become very envious and send someone to disturb them. But there is probably no example is given someone is glorifying the Supreme Lord and someone came and disturbed. Rather, everybody supported them to uplift that particular soul, that metal.
Except for one
Thank you so
example.
much.
Except for one example. Govardhan Dharam, right?
Oh.
That's the one. And for that,
But that's Krishna himself.
yeah, but you know, they were glorifying Krishna and Indra came, and for that Indra was punished over and over again. But other than that, it gives the devas more pleasure than when they see somebody taken to the path of bhakti. It gives them one thing is that okay, this person is not going to be competing with us anymore, right? So it's good. But second is because they're also devotees. So they say that Guru Bhai, our brother, Achyuta Kutumba. So they will try and help the person as much as possible.
It's very important because from the childhood, the upbringing is if you don't worship, you will get bad result or something will impact you negatively. So that here kind of force people in a way that hey, if I'm worshipping certain demigods, let's continue that and then add whatever comes in. Whereas if someone understands by root that why we are worshipping and why, then it becomes very clear.
Yeah. I mean, that's where the culture and philosophy kind of contradict one another because, some say that Hinduism is pantheistic, like many gods. Right? I was in a Vaishnava Christian dialogue, and the person was saying that they used to preach in India Christianity, and they would say that you worship Jesus. So yes, give us the deity of Jesus. So they will go and put it right next to Ganesh, and they will do that. They would say no, you have to remove Ganesh. They said no, can't remove So they consider culturally Hinduism as a word of pantheism. But actually, and this point is made by Gajendra. He makes this point that Hinduism is monotheistic but polymorphic. One God, many forms. There's only one God, Krishna. Comes as Vishnu, comes as Varas, different forms, but only one God. And for better or for worse, the one thing that Krishna rewards the most is exclusivity. Which is why this whole notion of that I will do this and continue to do this, what is the harm? Right? That is probably